Anybody have any questions while we're here? Property tax.
You got time for an interview?
In our National Mall, we're celebrating freedom's triumph over tyranny, liberty's conquest over oppression, and the enduring victory of the American spirit from the July 4th, 1776 to July 4th, 2026. Big dates. That's big dates. Two big ones. And tonight our country is stronger, freer, richer, safer, and prouder than ever before. But it all started with the miracle of history that lives forever in the heart of every single patriot. In Philadelphia, our founding fathers summoned the courage of giants and the wisdom of centuries to boldly proclaim these timeless truths. They declared that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with sacred, unalienable rights by the hand of our Creator, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In signing their names to the roster of freedom, those 56 patriots put everything at risk, stepped onto the stage of destiny, and seized a victory for the ages, and that's what it was. And this is an evening for the ages, I believe. This is something very special. This is bigger than if we didn't have the lightning blaring. We had lightning blaring, but this is bigger. Little more inconvenient, but it's bigger. I think in its own way, it's more beautiful. From the beginning, we were a nation that lived by the motto, victory or death, and live free or die.
İşbirliğimizi sürdürebilmemiz için Amerika'nın katsayı yaptırımlarını da kaldırmış olması gerekiyor. Sayın Büyükelçi Barak burada kendisinin bu konuda aslında mesajları da oldu geçtiğimiz aylarda. Sayın Başkan'ın da bu konuda olumlu düşündüğünü biliyoruz. Hem ticaret hacmi hedefine ulaşmak hem de NATO zirvesinde burada Sayın Trump gelmeden önce de açıkladılar. Aslında Türkiye'nin hattıyla zirveye katıldığını da açıkladılar ama aynı zamanda katsayı yaptırımlarının Türkiye'ye uygulanıyor olmasının bir tezat olduğu düşünülüyor. Bu noktada, bu görüşmede artık somut bir netice alınabilir mi? Ayrıca siz bunu gündeme taşıyacaksınızdır. Muhtemelen Sayın Başkan'ın da bu konudaki düşüncelerini de alabilirsem mutlu olurum. Teşekkür ediyorum.
I can tell you, we're going to be taking the sanctions off. Okay? I don't want him to waste his time answering that question because we're working very closely with Marco Rubio, a very famous man, great Secretary of State, and with Scott Bessent, and with Pete and everybody else. We're going to be taking the sanctions off. It's time to do that. Okay? We don't want to sanction friends. It's very simple. There's plenty of people we can sanction, and we are sanctioned. We don't want to sanction friends. And because of the president, you know, we have a very good relationship with the new leader of Syria, and he's done an amazing job. In a year and a half, he's pulled the whole country together. And I have a very great relationship with him. And somebody said, well, he's pretty rough to put him there. I approved him along with the president. We were the two that really wanted him. And he's done a great job. He's done a great job. He's pulled it together. Not an easy
Moscow
job.
frequently cites Europe's rising defense expenditures and continuing support for Ukraine as proof that Western nations are preparing for a major war with Russia. The European Union is investing heavily in the modernization and production of ammunition, armored vehicles and air defense systems, seeking to reduce its dependence on arms imports from the US.
We can see that in the past, NATO countries limited themselves to supporting the Kiev regime, which came to power illegally by using armed force and staging a coup d'etat. Today, the West is openly talking about preparing for a war against us and building up their military offensive budgets. However, to justify these expenses and the radical militarization of their countries, the heads of NATO and EU states again use lies about Russia's alleged military threat. At a meeting last year, NATO leaders agreed to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. They made the commitment under pressure from US President Donald Trump. Many European NATO members have already upped their military spending, in particular Germany, which has increased its defense budget to about $114 billion, while Spain and Norway have increased defense spending by nearly 50%. Russian authorities often accuse the EU of continuing to escalate the conflict in Ukraine. Earlier, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov noted that NATO's goal of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia has evolved into open war. He stated that Ukraine is now being used by NATO as a, quote, geopolitical battering ram.
Some frank guys. I think in the Belgian General Staff or the German one stated publicly that we are preparing for a war with Russia and Ukraine is helping us win time.
Countries bordering Russia, including Poland, Finland and the Baltic states, as well as in the Scandinavian region, have been stepping up their defence potential as well. Finland has lifted its long-standing ban imposed back in 1987 on the deployment of nuclear weapons on its territory. Russian officials say the lifting of the ban changes the security status in the region. Lithuania is also considering doing the same by lifting a ban on the domestic deployment of nuclear weapons. Moscow considers any movement of NATO troops or weapons towards its territory a security threat and a reason to take retaliatory measures by increasing troop numbers and weaponry along its borders.
A community in mourning, gathering to honour the life of a 4-year-old boy.
Seeing this happen in our own backyard is really hit home for everybody.
Being a social worker, you see a lot of things. This is probably by far the worst thing that I've ever seen. There's so much that can be done to prevent this stuff from happening.
The body of the young boy was discovered by police during a welfare check on Saturday afternoon, triggered after his mother attended the local police station.
This is just a horrific event. The loss of any child is something that shocks an entire community.
The 31-year-old woman was charged with domestic violence murder and refused bail.
According to court documents, police applied for an urgent order to collect forensic samples from the mother before charges were laid. Police sources have confirmed the investigation is examining allegations of cannibalism.
The government says the Department of Communities and Justice previously received and responded to a number of reports about the family. The most recent was 18 months ago. It's now been directed to launch an independent review.
The review will examine the department's previous contact with the family, why the child was living with the mother, whether departmental decisions and actions were appropriate, and whether the department could have done more to protect this child.
We had an Ombudsman report that came out earlier this year that showed that around 65% of children and young people being reported at risk were not being seen by a caseworker. And that is because the caseworkers are overworked and there's not enough of them.
A call to action as a community reels from a shocking tragedy.
Apple has restored support for debit and credit card payments for App Store purchases and subscriptions in India. This move comes after a 4-year hiatus. The feature is being rolled out in phases and currently supports Visa and MasterCard credit and debit cards. This means users can once again use their cards to pay for services, such as iCloud Plus and Apple Music after adding them to their Apple account. Reports also suggest that support for RuPay and American Express cards could be introduced in the future. So why did Apple stop accepting credit card payments 4 years ago? Apple stopped accepting credit and debit card payments in India in 2022 after the Reserve Bank of India introduced new card tokenization rules in 2021. The guideline prohibited merchants from storing customers' actual card details, such as card numbers and expiry dates. Instead, every card had to be replaced with a unique encrypted digital token generated by the card network. The move was aimed at reducing the risk of fraud and data breaches. Since the actual card information is stored only by the authorized bank or card network, hackers cannot access sensitive card details even if a merchant's database is compromised. The RBI also required payment-related data to be stored on servers located within India. Companies that fail to comply with these rules risk losing their ability to process card payments in the country. As Apple had not yet updated its payment infrastructure to meet these requirements, it removed card payments for App Store purchases in India. Since then, users have had to rely on UPI and net banking to update their Apple account balance to pay for subscriptions and digital purchases. Apple has now updated its payment systems to comply with RBI's tokenization and data localization requirements. As a result, users can once again add eligible Visa and MasterCard credit or debit cards to their Apple account. The cards are tokenized during setup, meaning Apple stores only use a secure digital token instead of the actual card details. This allows Apple to process payments while remaining compliant with Indian regulations. However, there's one important limitation. Users cannot currently use their credit or debit card directly at the App Store checkout. Instead, the card is used to add money to the Apple account wallet. The purchases are then made using that account balance. The return of card payments has also renewed speculation about the possible launch of Apple Pay in India. While Apple has reportedly held discussions with Indian banks and payment networks, the company has not announced any official launch plans. So how to pay using your credit or debit card on Apple? Using a credit or debit card for Apple purchases now involves a few simple steps. To use the feature, open Settings on your iPhone or iPad and tap your Apple account at the top of the screen. Select Payment and Shipping, then tap Add Payment Method and add an eligible Visa or MasterCard credit or debit card. Complete the OTP verification required by your bank to securely tokenize and link the card to your Apple account. Once the card has been added, you can use it to top up your Apple account balance, which can then be used to pay for App Store purchases and subscriptions including iCloud Plus and Apple Music. For now, Apple does not allow direct card payments at checkout on the App Store. Instead, users must first top up their Apple account and then use those funds to complete purchases.